The United States Department of Justice going after the most powerful sports league on the planet, just 2 weeks before the NFL draft, is the kind of collision no one in football saw coming. The Justice Department has opened an investigation into whether the NFL is forcing football fans to pay too much in subscription fees. So let's break down what happened, why the feds are looking at the NFL, and how a law signed 65 years ago has now become the center of a firestorm that could change how every American watches football. On April 9, 2026, the United States Department of Justice opened up an investigation into the NFL, as first reported by the Wall Street Journal's Jessica Tunkel and Dana Mattioli. The timing was unmistakable. The 2026 NFL Draft, which will take place in Pittsburgh on April 23 to 25, is quickly approaching. And instead of the pre-draft buzz dominating headlines, the league found itself staring down a federal probe. The Wall Street Journal reported that the U.S. Department of Justice opened an investigation into whether the NFL has engaged in anti-competitive tactics that harm consumers. The nature and scope per the report isn't currently known. A government official gave a brief statement about the reasoning. This is about affordability and creating an even playing field for providers. The official told ABC News that one line told the entire story. The federal government wasn't concerned about touchdowns or transactions. It was concerned about money, specifically how much money American football fans are being asked to spend just to watch games they used to get for free. The Justice Department investigation is into antitrust and anti-competitive tactics. Sen. Mike Lee, R. Utah, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Antitrust, wrote a letter last month requesting a review of the NFL's streaming platform exemptions and wanted to know whether the streaming package fees violated the Sports Broadcasting Act. Lee didn't hold back. In his letter, Lee wrote that to watch every NFL game during this past season, football fans spent almost $1,000 on cable and streaming subscriptions, adding that in practice, this requires subscribing to multiple streaming services and maintaining high-speed internet in addition to a traditional cable or satellite bundle. Forbes estimated the cost of watching every NFL game via streaming last season at $765. Either way you count it, $765 or close to $1,000. Those numbers represent a dramatic departure from the way football used to be delivered to American homes. In years past, football fans watched NFL games over broadcast TV, delivered free into their homes. The 1961 Sports Broadcasting Act allowed for sports leagues to get around some antitrust concerns and negotiate media rights. But now, games are spread across many different platforms and channels, some requiring paid subscriptions as traditional TV and cable providers contend with cord cutting and tougher competition from deep-pocketed tech companies. The NFL fired back almost immediately, with over 87% of our games on free broadcast television, including 100% of games in the markets of the competing teams. The NFL has for decades put our fans front and center in how we distribute our content, the league said in a statement, adding that the NFL's media distribution model is the most fan and broadcast friendly in the entire sports and entertainment industry. That sounded fine on the surface, but the DOJ, Congress, and millions of frustrated fans were saying something different. And to understand why the federal government decided to step in now, you have to go back to where this all started. A law passed in 1961 during a completely different era of television. The Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961 is a U.S. federal statute that amended antitrust laws to allow professional sports leagues to pool the broadcasting rights of all their teams and sign league-wide exclusive contracts with national networks. It was a monumental piece of legislation that forever altered the economics of professional sports in America. To understand why the law existed, you have to understand the landscape of professional football in the late 1950s and early 1960s. Teams were negotiating their own individual TV deals. Some teams in large markets could command huge contracts, while small market teams were left fighting for scraps. The imbalance threatened to rip the league apart. In 1960, the rival American Football League began its first season, bolstered with the help of a major network contract with ABC. The AFL's contract with ABC was the first ever cooperative TV plan in professional football, in which the league pools the broadcasting rights of all their teams, signs a league-wide exclusive contract with a national network, and the proceeds are then divided equally among the member clubs. The NFL looked at what the AFL was doing and wanted the same thing. It attempted to duplicate the AFL's success with ABC, and the NFL signed its own pooled deal. But there was a problem: antitrust law. Under existing statutes, 30-some independent businesses couldn't just agree to sell their product as one unified package. That was the textbook definition of collusion. So Congress stepped in with the Sports Broadcasting Act. Professional sports leagues are prohibited from anti-competitive conduct and mergers that hurt American consumers, according to the DOJ. However, the NFL was granted a limited scope of protection from antitrust laws, in adherence with the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961, which allows the league and franchises to negotiate TV broadcast rights collectively. There's a critical word buried in that legal framework: broadcast. The exemption was written for broadcast television, the kind that came through an antenna, completely free, into every American living room. Consumers watched games over broadcast TV, which remains accessible for free with an antenna for locally televised games, when the Sports Broadcasting Act was passed in 1961. The entire rationale behind the antitrust exemption was consumer access. The government was saying, we will allow you, the NFL, to operate as a cartel for the purposes of television rights, but in return, American consumers must be able to watch games for free. That was the deal. That was the bargain struck in 1961. The statutory exemption flows from the fact that the FCC owns the airwaves and licenses their use to networks like ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. The consumer benefits from the exemption by getting access to NFL games at no charge. For decades, the system worked exactly as intended. Football fans turned on their televisions on Sunday afternoon and watched the games on CBS or Fox. Monday Night Football was on ABC. The Super Bowl rotated between the major networks. The overwhelming majority of NFL content was available without paying a single cent, beyond the cost of a television and an antenna. But over the decades, a slow and seismic shift began. Cable TV arrived, then satellite, then the internet, then streaming. And with each technological evolution, the NFL found new revenue streams, and fans found new paywalls. Of the four major North American professional team sports, the act is most pertinent to the NFL, as all of its regular season and playoff games are broadcast via the rights assigned to the networks, via national broadcast rights packages, as opposed to local team broadcast rights as found in the other leagues. This made the NFL uniquely dependent on and uniquely protected by the Sports Broadcasting Act. It also made the league uniquely vulnerable the moment that protection was questioned, and that questioning didn't come out of nowhere. It had been building for years, fueled by one product in particular that tested the boundaries of the antitrust exemption like nothing before it. Long before the DOJ came knocking in 2026, the NFL had already been dragged into court over the very same questions now at the center of the federal investigation. The battleground was a product called NFL Sunday Ticket. Sunday Ticket, a lucrative broadcasting program of the National Football League, has for years allowed fans to watch out-of-market games not available in their local area, at a significant price. For more than 2 decades, the package was offered exclusively through DirecTV, the satellite TV provider. If you lived in Philadelphia but wanted to watch the San Francisco 49ers, your only option was Sunday Ticket, and the only way to get Sunday Ticket was to subscribe to DirecTV. In 2015, NFL Sunday Ticket subscribers filed a class action lawsuit against the NFL, its teams, and DirecTV. The complaint alleged that NFL Sunday Ticket was an example of anti-competitive conduct since it pooled each team's games into an exclusive distribution scheme, thus allowing the NFL and DirecTV to jack up prices. The plaintiffs made a straightforward argument. Instead, the plaintiffs posited that antitrust laws would require each team to compete for deals, which would also allow smaller networks to participate in the streaming game. The case wound through the courts for years. It was dismissed in 2017, reinstated by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in 2019, and finally went to trial in the summer of 2024. A jury ruled that the NFL violated antitrust laws in distributing out-of-market Sunday afternoon games on a premium subscription service, and awarded more than $4.7 billion in damages. The jury awarded $4.7 billion in damages to the residential class, and $96 million in damages to the commercial class. Since damages can be tripled under federal antitrust laws, the NFL could have ended up being liable for $14.39 billion. The lawsuit covered 2.4 million residential subscribers and 48,000 businesses in the United States, who paid for the package of out-of-market games from the 2011 through 2022 seasons on DirecTV. The trial lasted 3 weeks. It featured testimony from NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell and Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones. The verdict was staggering, but it didn't last. A federal judge overturned the jury's $4.7 billion verdict in the class action lawsuit and granted judgment to the NFL. U.S. District Judge Philip Gutierrez ruled that the testimony of 2 witnesses for the subscribers had flawed methodologies and should have been excluded. The court held that the jury did not follow the court's instructions on damages and instead relied on inputs not tied to the record to create its own overcharge. Rather than calculating the average overcharge, the jury calculated the average discount a residential consumer received, which the court determined was not only contrary to the court's instructions, but nonsensical as well. The NFL celebrated the reversal, but the damage had already been done, not financially, but reputationally and politically. While the jury ruling was thrown out on procedural grounds, the underlying issues about inflated prices and competition remain relevant and highlight a tension between fans' desire for affordable full access and leagues' revenue-maximizing efforts. It is currently unclear how the Ninth Circuit will rule, and there are rumbles this case could even be taken up by the Supreme Court. The Sunday Ticket case may have been overturned at the district level, but the questions it raised about the limits of the NFL's antitrust exemption, about whether pooling broadcast rights for pay platforms is legal, those questions were now front and center in Washington, D.C., and Washington was paying very close attention. The DOJ investigation didn't materialize in a vacuum. It arrived at a moment when the financial stakes of NFL broadcasting had reached astronomical heights, and the relationships between the league and its broadcast partners were under enormous strain. The NFL is currently in the midst of an 11-year, $111 billion media rights agreement that lasts through the 2033-34 season, with broadcast networks CBS, NBC, and Fox, as well as Disney's ESPN and Amazon's Prime Video. That is not a typo. $111 billion. The league averages nearly $11 billion per season in revenue from its media deals, and Commissioner Roger Goodell wanted more. The government's investigation comes as the NFL is looking to renegotiate media rights deals with its broadcast networks earlier than previously planned. The NFL signed an 11-year, $111 billion media rights deal in 2021 that contains a league opt-out clause after the 2029-30 season for all of its media partners except Disney, which has 1 extra year of rights, but the league wasn't willing to wait until 2029. It was already at the negotiating table. It embedded a change of control clause in CBS's contract, dormant until the Paramount-Skydance merger triggered it. Suddenly, CBS faced an opening demand of roughly $3 billion annually, up from $2.1 billion. The NFL planned to close CBS first, then use that price as the benchmark for Fox. The sequential negotiation strategy was surgically precise. Close one deal, establish a new price floor, then move to the next partner with built-in leverage. The NFL targeted completion by September 2026, compressing what would normally be a multi-year process into mere months. The NFL currently has television contracts with ESPN, ABC, NBC Sports, CBS Sports, Prime Video, and Netflix to air its games. Subscriptions are required to watch Monday Night Football games on ESPN that aren't simulcast on ABC, Thursday Night Football and the Black Friday game on Prime Video, and Christmas games on Netflix. Select postseason games also require subscriptions. The NFL has also awarded select games to ESPN Plus and Peacock in the past. In 2026, NFL games can be found across 10 streaming platforms, from Prime Video and Netflix to Peacock and Paramount Plus. That scattering of games across a dizzying array of platforms is precisely what infuriated fans and legislators alike. But here's where the story gets particularly fascinating. One of the entities most agitated by the NFL's streaming expansion was Fox, one of the NFL's own broadcast partners. Last week, Fox Corp, which owns a package of Sunday NFL games, and Sinclair, owner of affiliate stations, raised a similar issue with the Federal Communications Commission. The media companies had reportedly told the FCC that sports shouldn't be allowed behind paywalls, such as exclusive streaming deals, since it means higher costs for consumers and further issues for legacy TV. Fox Corp's senior VP, Legal and FCC Compliance, Joseph DeCipio wrote, Congress provided a valuable exemption from the antitrust laws for leagues that bargain collectively for sports broadcasting. But on its face, the statute does not exempt negotiations that the leagues may have with streaming services. Fox was in essence arguing that the NFL's deals with Amazon, Netflix, YouTube, and others were not protected by the 1961 law, because the law was written for broadcast television, not subscription streaming services. And it's possibly no coincidence that the Wall Street Journal got the scoop on the DOJ investigation. It's ultimately owned by Rupert Murdoch, who also owns Fox. Last week, the Wall Street Journal published an editorial that openly questions whether the NFL still deserves the antitrust exemption. The entire effort could be nothing more than a political power play by Fox to get the NFL to back off in its effort to try to get more money from its various broadcast partners in the remaining years of contracts that can be terminated after the 2029 season. Executive Chairman Lachlan Murdoch has said he believes the $2.5 billion a year Fox pays the NFL is fair market value, but he has also told Wall Street analysts the company may have to re-examine its other sports deals in preparation to pay more to the NFL going forward. The pressure was mounting from every direction. The NFL wanted more money from networks already stretched thin. The networks wanted to protect their positions. Streaming companies were flooding in with cash. Politicians were hearing from constituents who couldn't find their team's games without subscribing to 3 different services. And at the center of it all sat a 65-year-old law that Congress never imagined would have to reckon with Netflix, Amazon, and YouTube. FCC Chairman Carr said the agency is looking into whether sports leagues should continue to benefit from a special antitrust exemption, and that public comments solicited on the matter largely support keeping games more accessible. We actually got thousands and thousands of comments. It was a big number for the FCC. The vast majority so far, based on an initial assessment, support keeping a significant portion of these sports games on free, over-the-air broadcast TV. A Fox News poll in March indicated that 72% of sports fans think major sporting events should stay free on broadcast TV. The fan base, the very people the NFL claims to put front and center, was speaking with unmistakable clarity. So where does all of this leave us? The DOJ investigation is open. The NFL draft is 2 weeks away. The league is renegotiating billion-dollar media contracts. Congress is asking uncomfortable questions. The FCC is gathering public input. And fans are watching all of it while paying more than ever just to see their team play. The question is whether the NFL has exceeded the scope of its antitrust exemption, which applies, in theory, only to efforts to bundle the offering of 32 independent businesses for sale to FCC-regulated over-the-air broadcasters. Any effort by the NFL to sell games as a non-negotiable bundle to cable, satellite, or TV providers arguably does not enjoy an exemption from the antitrust laws, which, in theory, makes the NFL's sale of its games to Amazon, YouTube, Netflix, and even ESPN, which the NFL now partially owns, an antitrust violation. Courts have ruled in the past that the exemption does not apply to other media, including cable, satellite, and streaming. In 2024, a California jury found an antitrust violation as to the pricing of the Sunday ticket package. The current investigation could, in theory, result in a ruling that the NFL must stop selling games that way, that would shut out every provider that isn't an over-the-air network, and which in theory would allow individual teams to strike cable, satellite, and/or streaming deals for their home games. If that were to happen, the ramifications would be breathtaking. The entire architecture of NFL media distribution, the pooled rights, the league-wide negotiations, the unified front would crumble. Individual teams in large markets like New York, Dallas, and Los Angeles could command enormous sums for their own broadcast rights, while small market teams like the Green Bay Packers or Jacksonville Jaguars could face existential financial peril. The Packers previously said disruption to the current broadcast model would pose an existential threat to the organization and its existence in Green Bay as we know it. That statement should not be overlooked. Green Bay, one of the most iconic franchises in all of football, the team that gave Vince Lombardi his legend and Brett Favre his mythology, could be fundamentally imperiled by the loss of pooled broadcasting revenue. The antitrust exemption doesn't just benefit the NFL as a corporate entity. It is the connective financial tissue that holds the league's competitive balance together. And yet, the counter-argument is equally powerful. As Senator Lee wrote, the modern distribution environment differs substantially. from the conditions that precipitated this exemption. Instead of a small number of free broadcast networks, the NFL now licenses games simultaneously to subscription streaming platforms, premium cable networks, and technology companies operating under different business models. To the extent collectively licensed game packages are placed behind subscription paywalls, these arrangements may no longer align with the statutory concept of sponsored telecasting or the consumer access rationale underlying the antitrust exemption. The NFL's defense rests on a single repeated claim that 87% of games are available on television for free, and the league adds that the 2025 season was the most watched since 1989, reflecting its wide availability to fans. But that 87% figure obscures a critical detail. If you want to watch every game, if you're a diehard fan who doesn't live in your team's market, the free broadcast number means nothing. You need Amazon Prime for Thursday nights. You need Netflix for Christmas games. You need ESPN or a cable package for Monday nights. You need YouTube TV for Sunday ticket. The costs stack up quickly, relentlessly, and unavoidably. It should be stressed the opening of a DOJ investigation does not mean the investigation will lead to legal action. An investigation by the feds means NFL and team officials might need to turn over various materials and answer questions, including in live interviews. But the investigation might find the NFL is complying with the law. There is a very real possibility that this investigation goes nowhere, that it is a pressure tactic, a negotiating chip, or a political gesture that dissipates after the headlines fade. The Department of Justice's investigation into NFL media rights deals, but there's also a very real possibility that this is the beginning of the end for the NFL's antitrust exemption as we know it. The move comes at a time when both the FCC and Congress have made plenty of noise about the viability of the antitrust exemption as the NFL moves more games. From free, over-the-air networks to streaming platforms, individual teams could sell rights separately, fragmenting the league's pricing power entirely. That's the one threat the NFL cannot engineer around. The league has navigated every challenge thrown at it for over a century. Rival leagues, labor disputes, concussion lawsuits, gambling scandals, a global pandemic. It has always found a way to emerge stronger. But the DOJ investigation strikes at the foundational legal architecture that makes the NFL's entire financial model possible. It targets not a scandal, not a misbehaving player or owner, but the very mechanism through which the league earns its money. The 2026 NFL Draft will proceed as planned in Pittsburgh. The picks will be made, the jerseys will be held up, the commissioner will get booed, and somewhere in the background, lawyers at the Department of Justice will be reading contracts, analyzing pricing models, and asking a simple question that has suddenly become the most important question in professional sports. Does the NFL still deserve the special treatment Congress gave it 65 years ago? The answer to that question will determine the future of how 200 million Americans watch football.